So if anyone is wondering up until this point, why the fuck is any of this happening?
Yeah.
It's because Bill Finger's trying to create a scenario where they can frame Batman.
It's like, it's not enough. They could call it the Penguin, and we get it. Kids are we're already on board, you know? I'm 8, and I'm reading this thing, and I just like the fact that one is a silly fat guy with a big nose. He's the Penguin! It's like, no, but I've been trying to challenge these little brain-dead idiots. I'm gonna give them something to learn.
Welcome to Bat Lessons, the Batman History Podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Brian.
And on this episode, we're talking all about the pompous, waddling master of foul play, the criminal maestro of 1,000 ubiquitous umbrellas, the Penguin. And to help us do that, we're joined by a very special guest, Sal from ComicPOP. Welcome to the show.
Ooh, thanks for having me.
Are you excited to talk about the Penguin with us?
Whack, 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 whack. Yeah, definitely. I love the Penguin. He's great.
What's your background with the Penguin? Do you have a favorite story?
Oh, man. Okay, so... No. I vividly recall the death of the Penguin. I think they've killed him 3 or 4 times in his history, but the death of the Penguin from Breyfogle and Grant is a lot of fun. I love that story.
You guys did a back issues on that, right?
We did a whole back issues on it back when we were trying that out. It's called Bat Issues.
Yes.
It was a good idea. And I'm also loving the Tom King miniseries, or series, I should say. Maxi series. I think it's going to 12.
It seems like Penguin's getting a lot of love right now because of the Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson movie. And I think Tom King was on Word Balloon with John Huntress recently and said that they were trying to get 2 trades on the shelves by the time the HBO show came out. So that's coming up, you know, so there's definitely some Penguin stuff coming along. I've read a couple of the issues of that, but I'm not totally caught up to date.
I can tell you I'm caught up. It's solid. I think we're on issue 6, so we're halfway through the Penguin series.
Okay.
And I'm finally I get it now. You know, I liked it. You know, the premise is pretty, you know, it's just Penguin is out of the game. His kids have taken over his, purview, but he is being strong-armed into getting back where he was, and it's kind of why is he doing that? And issue 6 is oh, that's why, I guess. It's interesting. It's oh, I understand now. This is cool.
I'll have to catch up. When I left it, he was still trying to put the team together.
Yeah, that team thing was,
it's very, very Tom King of who's the Force of July? I don't know what is happening.
Yeah, he's well, I read it back in when I was a kid, I was 13, I had copies of this book from 1947, and I love the Force of July. They're so great. No, they're not. There's nothing great about them, but they are in it, and they are used. They are complete tools. I don't want to spoil it, but I don't think they really matter.
So on Bat Lessons, we mostly do Golden Age stuff. We're trying to build the history for people to figure out where these characters came from, what's the social context, what are the creators like. So how do you feel about the Golden Age? How much do you know about comics from that time?
I mean, I'm intimately familiar with Batman.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, and as a Marvel kid, they didn't exist. The Marvel Age is 62.
Right.
So that's the Silver Age as far as I'm concerned, and so I'm pretty. It's funny. I actually read a lot of Golden Age Batman. So
really,
but not in linear order. I have this book, and I wish I had it on me. You'd see it. It's great. It's a book from the library, and it's called Batman from the 40s to the 60s or 70s. So I've read, I want to say 40 or 50 issues of Batman, from 1940 to 1960, and they're, going from Robin dies at dawn to the the introduction of Batwoman to the Batman 2 Robin 2 period. Batwoman and Batgirl marry Batman and Robin. You know what I mean? There's I'm familiar with that stuff. And Mr. Freeze being introduced way later and not being in any way interesting, and
that's what's always so interesting to us is what characters changed and which ones came fully formed, because there's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Riddler. Riddler is a character where it's out of the gate, there he is. He's wearing a domino mask. He's wearing a full body green suit with question marks on it. The only difference is his name.
Right.
I think it's Eddie Nash back then, but in any case, that's not there. But all the puzzles. It's except for the fact that like he does have riddles, but they're more like jokes, and the riddles are, you know, he throws a giant like finger puzzle at you. You know, it's
sure.
It's a lot of big stuff, a lot of big oversized stuff. I'm like, they all kind of have that shtick. They all shop at the same warehouse. But yeah.
On the flip side, we just did Clayface, and like,
oh god,
it really doesn't have anything to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The first appearance, which is like, you know, his name is Clayface, and that's about how much he has in common.
Right, exactly. No, he jumps in the water. He swims through something, or no, he.
Oh no! You're thinking of the one from the '60s.
I am thinking of the one from the '60s. The one that finds like a secret like lagoon under the water that he.
It's like a rainbow puddle thing.
Yeah. That's which is essentially just he just drank petroleum. I mean, all right, but no, the first Clayface. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Do you know the introduction of Penguin? Do you know the first Penguin story?
I'm reaching back. I don't think I recall what the first Penguin story is, so I'm looking forward to being enlightened a little bit.
Okay. Well, if you're willing to, so do you care for? Do you enjoy some of these Golden Age stories, or
only in a kitsch value? You know, when I was a kid, like I have the library book is still in my possession. We just never returned it. So I have like the stamp on it for like what year it was supposed to be back, and let me tell you, it would embarrass me. So I'm not even going to share. But like, so as a child, I definitely read them and enjoyed them. Like I didn't see any difference between what I was reading from the 40s and what like was available on the shelf, you know, like in the early 90s. And but looking at them today, you know, they're not my cup of tea. You know, I'm not a big goofy, silly, off the wall kind of fan of that style of comic.
Yeah.
But I think that like it definitely appeals to a certain age and dynamic, and I understand it. Like, you know, people who are big Dick Sprang fans are like, this is peak, and I'm like, I get it, I totally get it. And you know, my as a kid though, like my Batman was not like smiling with like half moon circle eyes with
sure,
you know, but I was always a big Robin fan, and that really helped. Like that kept me going. You know, like I don't think it was not the Golden Age, but I'm thinking of those gorgeous covers from like the '60s where there's one where like Batman was shot dead, and the cover is Robin just holding it, being like, "I'll avenge you." And there's another one that's fantastic, which is spot the differences on this cover to tell why Batman is not himself, or why he's an imposter.
I don't know that one.
Oh man, it's great. Like Robin's like, "There's a crime. Commissioner Gordon's on the phone. He says there's a crime," and Batman's like, "I'm not gonna go deal with that. I want to watch myself on TV." And they're like, "How is this not Batman?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, everything." But all right. Yeah, but no. What about you guys? No, I mean, this is a Golden Age show, so I assume there must be some kind of personal affinity for this.
Yeah, we kind of systematically. I mean, we make fun of it a lot. I mean, it's
you got it.
There's an understanding of like it made sense at the time, and that the audience was children and stuff.
Yeah.
And then like how ham-fisted some of the writing was, because the finesse around comics developed over time, and that was very early days for comics.
Yes.
And they were throwaway. They weren't like collector's items, stuff like that. So we have a lot of fun kind of tearing them up while still like talking about where they came from.
Totally fair. Yeah, well, and I think it's like I liken it to video games, where it's like, you know, yeah, it's always fun to make fun of like the E.T. Atari video game, because it's like but video game theory and design straight up just didn't exist. So they were just like, we can make this, you know, like we can make baseball, kind of. We can make you go on a line, and you can get things that make you invincible for a second, like. So I don't judge like early video games, because they were just like, we're just trying everything.
Yeah, they're definitely figuring it out.
Yeah, with early comics, or at least with Golden Age comics, it's like, look, I think we're all, none of us are like, the Eisners don't exist. We're not trying to win any awards. You know, we're just trying to sell 10-cent magazines to children every day. Like,
we're trying to exist.
I get it.
Just a few days longer.
Yeah, no one is like writing dissertations being like, Batman is important to the zeitgeist. Like,
yeah.
You told somebody like that, if you told Dick Sprang, like, dude, what do you think about the zeitgeist? He'd be like, who is that? What character is that? Did I invent him?
That sounds like a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the other thing, some people have described us as kind of like stuff you should know, but also Batman. Like,
right.
There's a lot of history. There's a lot of digressions. And so we use it as an excuse to like kind of dig in on like whatever strikes our fancy or whatever we happen to find interesting that's going on at that time. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and we'll try to quickly summarize Detective Comics number 58, which is the first appearance of Penguin. This is December 1941. So for listeners of the show, this is about the same time that we get the first appearance of Scarecrow, which was happening in World's Finest number 3, I think.
Okay.
And this is like a year and a half after the first appearance of Clayface, which we just did on the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just talking about Dick Sprang, or before that still. So this is probably mostly Jerry Robinson with some like, actually probably still some like Bob Kane traces and things inside of it.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Super early.
Nice.
So Brian, do you want to describe the sort of title page we got going on?
Where to start? So you've got two big brick buildings. You've got Robin swinging down from a rope towards unquestionably like the Penguin, like the villain character that we know.
Right, no notes. Look at him. He is literally like the Kenner superpowers.
100%.
Like nothing, no, almost no changes.
Yeah, and then in the background, I don't know, 12 to 15 foot tall like penguin, like the animal penguin.
Sigmund Freud looks really concerned.
Yeah, Sigmund Freud, good call. And then you just kind of jump in from there. You've got just the preface, I guess, scrawled on the side of the building, and
Penguin's like holding up what looks like maybe like a married couple or something like that. He's got a gun. He's like pulling pearls off of him. This moment, unlike many of the title pages up until this point, doesn't happen in the story. Totally unrelated. Doesn't have anything to do with anything.
Love it. It's like a fake out cold open. They're just like, you gotta open in media res. Penguin's holding up an old couple. Does that happen in the book? Where do we cut back to that?
Absolutely not. Doesn't happen.
Tons of clickbait on these covers.
Indeed. Yeah. I love how far away Freud is from his wife. He's like, clearly, he robbed, like Penguin robbed him first, and then he just took like 3 big steps back. Like, okay, well, it looks like you guys are handling this okay. I'll just be on my way.
He's out.
Yeah.
So the story opens, and Dick and Bruce are at an art exhibition, and we've got a bunch of like really awful gags up front. Like we've pivoted from the Clayface story. They're playing it pretty straight. This is humor, right? Mm-hmm. And Dick's going, but Bruce, all I said was the man who made that thing probably needed a few more lessons. And like Bruce is like shooting him away. There's a guy really angry in the background.
Yeah. It's pretty cringy, the situation that Robin has kicked him off in.
Yes. It reinforces that like definitely at this point he's like 12 at max. Like
yeah.
He's acting like a little kid for sure.
Absolutely.
We're looking at art. There's these 2 paintings that Bruce calls Watteaus. He says that they're worth $500,000 between them, which we're supposed to think that's a lot of money, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, 1940, whatever the hell. This is, that's a lot of money. $500,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they keep walking through the art exhibit, and Dick starts laughing at the penguin. Penguin's standing there, and he's just laughing. And Bruce is like, "Hey, man, don't laugh at people. That's not nice.
Don't shame that man. He can't help how he looks."
And Dick says, "But look at him. He does look like a penguin." And Bruce is like, "You're right." And he starts laughing too.
Oh my god,
which I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
And the staff guy comes running in, and he's like, "Whoa! Everybody, stop! We have to search you. The 2 Watteaus have been cut out of their frames. They've been stolen.
So they're ruined." Right? Yeah.
Yes. And so they search everyone, right? Mm-hmm. And we have this really weird sequence where there's a guy who looks like he's rich is being searched, and he takes off his suit jacket, and it turns out he's not wearing a real suit dress or shirt or whatever. And his date's like, "I'm out of here. You're a phony."
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. They check Penguin's umbrella, and there's nothing inside it.
Oh, surprise.
That's that. There's been a heist. Later, Penguin shows up at the hideout of a big crime boss in town, who is in fact simply called the Boss.
Listen, 25, 30 years later, Stan Lee will start calling people the big man.
True.
And, Kingpin. It's like, it's not too far a cry. I get it.
Yep.
On the nose.
And he's like, "Hey guys, did you hear about this heist that happened of these 2 paintings?" And the goons are going to like shoot him. Right.
Yep.
And boss is like, whoa, let's hear him out. First thing that he does with an umbrella. This is the first like I don't know, gimmick umbrella.
Gadget thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He unscrews it, takes it out, pulls out the paintings. He's like, here, I've got him. And we get like a little 2-panel montage where we get the vibe that like Penguin's taken over, right?
Yeah.
He's explaining a heist that's going to be happening. The boss is like leaned back, legs kicked up, arms crossed. You tell him, Penguin.
Made a good decision backing this Penguin guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're talking about how they're going to go to the Stahl auctioneering house, right?
Mm-hmm.
To do their next job. We cut to that, right? Bruce just happens to be at the auctioneering house. There's an auction happening.
What luck.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
They're auctioning off something called the Columbia Diamond, and the lights cut. They go out. They come back on. Diamond's gone.
Check the umbrella.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Just in case anyone in the audience is wondering, I did do a quick Google search, and $500,000 in 1940 is about $10.7 million in today's
that's a lot of money
buying power. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a ton, and each was worth 500,000.
Right. So he's got 2 of them. So
he's got 2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that. Like the diamond stolen. We basically there's no follow up. Bruce is like, this Penguin guy, this guy in this tux is appearing when there's these heists happening. Maybe it's him.
Oh, good deduction. World's greatest detective.
But there's no like detective on the scene that's like, Bruce Wayne has been at 2 of these crimes.
It's true. So later, we're back at the boss's headquarters, and Penguin has given the diamond to the boss, and he says, I want my fair cut, right? I want my fair share. And the boss says, you're growing too big for your britches.
Mm-hmm.
And Penguin gets his second gadget out. He's got his umbrella. It's a gun this time.
Ah.
He shoots the boss and turns to the goons who just watched him shoot their boss and said, like, who's with me? And they're like, sure, we're with you.
Yeah, at least until I can leave.
That's totally how that happens.
Yeah.
And then somehow, there's a lot of, by the way, this is not a good story.
No.
I'm sorry. There's some really good Bill Finger stories.
Yeah.
This is not one of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're like, I don't know, Penguin, how about that? Like they're not thinking of the menagerie they're going to be building here. They're just kind of like, what? I mean, look, again, I hate to compare it to Spider-Man, but it's like the Sinister Six was just the first 6 villains we created.
Right.
Like we, I'm actually shocked they didn't think to do it where they were like, okay, so what do we got? We got Joker, we got Scarecrow, we got Penguin, all of them team up.
Yeah.
Make them a team. The confusing bunch.
The thing about this point in the story I think is funny is they're like setting up Penguin as a gangster who he continues to be a gangster throughout Batman history and stuff.
Right.
But this moment where he's like, well, I've killed the big boss guy, and so now you guys work for me now, which is like, it makes no sense at all. Like in reality, they'd be like, oh God.
Oh, but it happens all the time in the comics, right?
Oh,
in fact,
yeah.
this is kind of a Penguin trope. Is like
he
comes in and like takes over the town or whatever.
Totally.
Like,
And it's not like these guys are like, okay, yeah, I'll say whatever he says until he's gone, and then I'm out of here, and I'm never seeing that Joker again. Like,
because you to shoot you next.
They're just like, oh, a new job, okay, cool, and like, yeah, he's way badder than the last guy, so like, yeah, we'll just follow him. Like, that's that's definitely not how that works.
So then we cut to later, and there's 2 of the Penguin's goons are in a bar, and it just so happens that Bruce is there. He's in a get-up. He's in a disguise, and he's listening in. They're planning a heist, another one at the same Stahl auctioneering house for later that night.
Yeah.
They don't explain how Bruce knows that they're there. They don't explain, how he knows that they're Penguin's goons.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. We just know that Bruce knows now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We cut to later that night. He goes to the auctioneering house. They've got this acetylene torch. They're cutting open a safe, and through a hole in the ceiling, which apparently buildings just have holes.
Oh,
in the ceiling
for easy access. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Batman drops down in and fights them a little bit. I'm sorry, Brian. Do you want to talk for a little bit?
Oh, sure.
I'm getting over COVID.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Yeah. My throat is killing me.
It's totally fair.
Well, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage here because I read this twice and had a terrible time following it.
It is hard to follow. Like it's because a lot of like leaps in logic happen between panels.
Yes,
you're just kind of like, oh, is that what? Okay.
Yeah. So at this point,
I can keep trying.
Oh, I mean, I can cover this part for sure, but like Batman swoops in, he beats him up, he comically smashes these two dudes over the head with a piece of art, and their faces come through right where the faces were on the art, of course.
Turns them into pigs.
Yeah, they're a couple of pigs.
And then the Penguin rolls in. And he's like, and he's got his whole attitude like, I'm not afraid of Batman. No, tisk tisk, look what you've done to my poor men.
Yeah,
and Batman is like, so it is you, confirmed. And he goes after him. And next little umbrella magic trick, he sprays him. Yeah, he sprays him. So Penguin sprays Batman with some gas. What's it called? It just says strangling gas spurts from Penguin's deadly umbrella.
Gas.
And my question is it the same umbrella? Or is it
I don't know.
Does he have 3 umbrellas? But it could be just a really versatile umbrella.
It was the same one. Yeah. Right? I mean, I was thinking it was like the oh shoot, what's it called? The bat belt. The utility belt. I thought it was the utility belt of umbrellas. But I did think when I was reading this the first time that like, considering that this was written in like the late 30s, early 40s, and like this concept of gas, like they don't have a sophisticated understanding of like poison gas that we do in 2024. This is like just post World War One.
Right.
You
so
know?
they
it's
might
just
be like
strangling gas.
Like mustard gas, but we're like, but these guys, but if they said mustard gas, it would like literally trigger any man over 18 reading this comic book.
True.
And so they'd be like, well, we don't want to give shell shock to anyone who's reading this comic book. Let's just call it strangling gas. They know what we mean. For all we know, strangling gas is what they called mustard gas on the on the battlefield in World War One. Like, we don't know.
Hey,
it's true.
Yeah,
Batman's out of commission. They finish the robbery. They get this jade idol, which is the item apparently that they're after, out of the safe.
Sure.
And they decide to leave Batman, and they climb up out the same hole in the roof. Apparently everyone's using the hole in the roof. I don't know what happens with the rain. Is this a skylight?
Yeah.
I don't...
They filled them all in the 50s, all these metropolitan roofs with the holes in them.
And on their way out, they pull the alarm, right? So the police show up. Jade Idol's gone. Batman's on the scene. He's been framed.
Right? Of course.
Wow.
And this is the Bill Finger thing, right? Every issue, he wants to do a thing. So, like, the first Joker, he's like, I'm going to do a locked room plot, right?
Okay.
And so the whole thing is contrived around inventing the scenarios for, Joker to kill someone while he's not in the room.
Like, it's not enough that it's like the Joker shows up and kills people, Batman appears and punches him. He's like, no, let's get...
No, it's got to be
I got to give myself a list of parameters that no one's imposing on me except for myself.
Yes. The same was true of the Clayface story. It's a whodunit. Like the first 4 pages of that story is he's just introducing random characters that never appear again, just so that they can be suspects.
That is a trope they will continue. I remember vividly them introducing characters for no good reason, and then and then just like, okay, well, what was that all about? What do you mean we need to fill pages? That was what it was all about. I literally 6 panels worth of story. Gotta pat him out.
So if anyone is wondering up until this point, why the fuck is any of this happening?
Yeah.
It's because Bill Finger's trying to create a scenario where they can frame Batman, right?
Thanks, Bill.
So that's what's happening.
All right.
Well, yeah, and the title of the issue is like the perfect frame up, right?
The frame up, yes.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not enough. They could call it the Penguin, and we get it. Kids are already, we're already on board. I'm 8, and I'm reading this thing, and I just like the fact that one is a silly fat guy with a big nose. He's the Penguin. It's like, no, but I'm trying to challenge these little brain dead idiots. I'm gonna give them something to learn.
Yeah, no, it's very Bill Finger.
Yeah.
So Batman wakes up, and the police have taken him. So this is really bizarre. And if the first time I read this, I didn't get it. I had to read it 2 or 3 times to understand what's happened.
Okay.
They've taken Batman to a man's house named Mr. Boniface. And Mr. Boniface is the owner of the Jade Idol. And they say, Batman, this is just a formality. We need you to tell Mr. Boniface what happened with your Jade Idol.
Okay.
Right? And who walks out but Penguin?
Right.
So Penguin is Mr. Boniface.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah. So there's no Oswald Cobblepot yet. That doesn't happen until the comic book strip or the comic strip for the newspapers. That's like 2 or 3 years from now.
Cool.
His name is Boniface. Or Boniface, I don't know.
Or maybe he is Cobblepot, but he's impersonating Boniface. Like, this is one of many aliases.
Yeah. And he comes out swinging. He says, "That's him. I recognize him. His close mask anywhere. He's been threatening me and, trying to extort, protection money out of me. And he must have taken my jade idol because, he's got my
here.
number. He's been after me.
He's out to get me. Yeah.
And the police officers are like, okay, I understand. We'll take him away. So this is the framing has succeeded. Penguin's rubbing his hands. He's like, yes.
Whack.
Whack. And so the police are driving him away. They've got him in this police van.
The paddy wagon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, did you also... don't forget, they also, like, Penguin releases a gas to make them believe his bullshit story even better.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, he's like that strangling gas.
Oh.
Apparently, he's a master of toxins. So because they're like, yeah, okay, well, Batman, let's go, get in the paddy wagon. And one of them's like, that gas, I can't even think. Like, and
you're right.
Maybe it's
I didn't notice
maybe
that.
it's to make the policeman more susceptible to suggestion. Maybe it's to make Batman not just punch everyone and leave.
I have no idea.
Either way,
yeah.
gas, and you can see Penguin wringing his hands, like, yeah, it's all going according to plan. My ridiculously circuitous scheme is 1/4 complete. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry, it gets more convoluted.
Good.
This next step, you'll
I love that. If I were 6, though, I would really be clapping my hands. Yes.
So, the paddy wagon's driving away, and all of a sudden, another car comes up and T-bones it from the side.
And right before they hit, like it's Penguin's goons. They say, now we need to finish the rest of the Penguin's plans, and then they T-bone it.
Cool. It's like, you got it. You won. You won. Batman is literally going to jail.
Yes. Well, they're fighting in the street. So Batman's coming out of the paddy wagon. They're having a tussle. They capture him. They take him back to Penguin's house, Mr. Boniface's house. It's the exact same room, right? So this is like the second twist or the third twist. I don't know. It's like they're stealing the idol, but then it's his idol. But then they get him out, right?
Yeah.
And Batman's like, "What are you doing, man? Like, what is
this?
Yeah.
I was just
You
here
again?
And Penguin's explaining like, "Oh, I get to sell the Jade Idol, so I get money for that. I get insurance money on the Jade Idol. I get to frame you, right? And so I'm scot-free, and I get to keep living my life, and I have someone to be the blame, be the fall guy, right?
What a mastermind.
And all of these goons are like, wow, I'm glad we folled this guy. Such clever plans.
I'm glad I hitched my wagon to this guy's horse.
Yeah.
Criminal mastermind.
Seriously.
And I still don't explain. I still don't understand why that means they had to get him away. I guess they might think that, like, okay, if Batman gets a chance to like talk to the police,
Yeah, the gas clears up.
Right, then he's
He'll
going to be
clear
like, wait,
his
what?
name
No, I tried to stop him. The Penguin's the bad guy. Go back. Let's all go back to his house.
whatever you say, Batman.
Yeah. So Batman's tied up, and he does one of his magic gadgets where he's like, I can move just enough that I can just start tapping my foot a little bit. And what he's doing is he is using
like Morse
transmitter.
Yeah, it's Morse code transmitter.
Exactly. He's
to
got a little
Robin.
radio.
And poor Robin, he's got this coming out of his belt of all things, and it says, "Robin, I'm being held in the mansion on the corner of blah blah blah." It tells him where he's at, and Robin's like, "Uh-oh, I need to go save Batman. He's in trouble."
Yeah.
And so then, go ahead,
Brian. I don't think you did it justice how ridiculous this scenario is.
Oh, okay.
Because like
take it away.
we've got shit-eating grin Batman smiling while he's sitting in his chair tied up.
It's like, oh,
And
you
he
got
says,
me.
Might as well catch up with my dancing sitting down.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they're like,
has
so
an
he's
excuse for the
insane, this
tapping.
guy. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Penguin's like, I gave him too much.
Yeah.
Robin gets the message. He shows up. They start fighting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird shot where, Penguin's sitting at like a dining table, and there's like a gigantic jug of what looks like water.
Yeah.
And like Robin
Like a Gatorade
jumps on
jug.
the table.
Yep.
Yeah. And it like
yeah.
flies through the air for some reason because we wanted water flying.
Yep.
And Yeah, they fight all the goons. It's going well.
Batman gets free. He starts fighting
Mm-hmm.
too.
And then the Penguin pulls his umbrella.
Oh no!
Yeah. And Robin's going to go in, but like Batman's like, whoa, I've seen this.
Yeah, you might get
It's a dangerous
strangled by
umbrella.
his gas, or killed with like bullets, because sometimes that also works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so Penguin's going to call the police while he's got them stuck up with the umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess he's sufficiently distracted that Batman like throws a vase at his head and they make a break for it.
Okay.
So they get away. That's it. That's it. Like, I don't know why that's not the end of the story.
Shouldn't this be
I don't know
over?
what's the-
Like,
yes, I know, right? Like it just keeps going.
yeah, this is I vividly like. Usually, my recollection of most of these Batman stories is that this is how they end. Like, there's
Right.
a lot of setup. Like, there's like 2/3 of the book is the beginning, and then
Yes.
like there's a twist which barely constitutes that. And then Batman inevitably, because either Batman or Robin is tied up to a chair, and then one of them is freed by the other. There's
Yes.
3 panels. Invariably, one of them is a circle because they want to really zhuzh up this comic book. And
Yeah.
and then the bad guy's beaten. Sometimes Commissioner Gordon will be at the end, like literally to put the collar on them himself. And like that's the book. And then
Yes.
and then there's like big, because they're like, well, there's like more. There's a magazine. There's like 2 or 3 other stories in this one thing.
But believe it or not, and I know this feels like it's going on forever and ever and ever. I think we're on page like 11 right now
Yeah.
of like 14. Like it's not a long book,
Wow.
but there's just so much text.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And just like non sequiturs, they're just jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know if we want to do the rest of it, but like,
We're almost done. Come on, we gotta hang in there. There's like
okay,
two,
okay.
there's 2
Very
pages
close, yeah.
left.
so they escape, right? They now know where Penguin lives.
Yeah.
So they get into disguises and they hang out in front of his house every day, waiting to hear about the next heist.
Yeah.
One of these times, they're leaving the building. One of the goons says, "This job will be easy. We got all the groundwork laid out." And so they decide to follow him. I don't know why they don't follow him other times. I don't, but whatever.
Yeah.
They go to the Bowery. This is the first time I believe that it's called the Bowery.
Yeah.
Which like Bowery neighborhood in New York, also neighborhood in Gotham. It has been named Gotham at this point.
Yes.
Although previously the books they had been calling it New York. So I don't know if they're intentionally saying Gotham also has a Bowery, or Bill has just forgotten and it's still New York because it was New York last month.
New York is also like called Gotham City. I assume that they only refer to it as Gotham like for fun. They're not
Right.
world building yet. They're just kind of
Right,
like, oh yeah,
right.
no, it's New York. And there's
Right.
a Bowery and we got it. And it's like, wait, no.
So there's a flop house that's next door to a diamond exchange. So they check into a room at the flop house, and they're using an acetylene torch to get through a torch again, but they are
Yeah.
through the wall of the flop house into the diamond exchange.
Cool.
Batman and Robin see it happen. They say it's time to jump into action. So they climb up the side of the building. They jump in the window. They disrupt this thing in action. It's just another action sequence, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're fighting goons.
Robin gets to throw in a good comment like, "This is for framing my pal," and he punches a guy.
Really got to drive home that he was framed.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a frame up.
Cool.
He sprays acid out of his umbrella.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He gets away. Penguin gets out of the diamond exchange with the jewels.
Yeah.
They chase him up onto an elevated train station. They fight for a bit. There's a train coming. They're on the tracks.
Tension.
Very scary.
Yeah.
Yes. Penguin gets away, but Batman doesn't. Oh no.
What?
Is he going to
The
get hit by
death
the
of
train?
Batman for
Yeah.
all these 6-year-olds.
No, he says, "I just lay flat, Robin." And the cars passed over me.
That is such a terrible thing to put into your comic book right for children. Like, kids, by the
Yeah.
way, because like kids literally they are just not doing anything when they're not working in a factory, and so they, I found some train tracks. Good thing I could just lie down on them, because trains famously don't have lower hanging things beneath them to knock your head off.
That's
Also,
right.
this is the birth of Penguin's famous line, "Nobody can catch the penguin, hee hee," which of course will last another 80 years of Batman history.
Mm-hmm. This is also the origin of Jackass.
Yeah.
Let's try it.
You have to lie down under a train track. I got the idea from a Batman comic
it's-
book.
Totally gonna work.
Hee hee.
So yeah, Penguin gets away, but they get the jewels from him somehow. We don't actually see that happen, but the last panel of the comic book is they've cleared their name. They've gone to Commissioner Gordon. They've returned the jewels. The end.
Fantastic.
And there's a little clip on the bottom that says, perhaps someday we'll see Penguin again, essentially.
Gee, I hope so.
Spoilers. He does. Detective Comics 59, the very next issue.
Oh,
Yeah.
my God. Wow. Couldn't wait.
Yeah.
Couldn't hold their horses.
So one thing that's interesting about like Golden Age is originally they like had people and then like killed them like right away.
It's true.
And then they started to figure out like, oh, some of these people might be worth bringing back. So they like do this tricky thing to like kind of retcon in the issue that Joker died because like he might be good to come back.
The original script, Joker dies at the end of Batman #1.
Right.
And then I think it was Whitney Ellsworth comes back and says like, whoa. You might want to keep this guy around.
Yeah.
And so, they redrew like the last panel
Just
so
the
that he
last
doesn't
panel,
die.
yeah.
Good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they've got some other folks that have come back, like Catwoman is recurring, and so at least this time they were like, okay, we'll just write in he's gonna stick around.
Sure. Well, and Penguin actually stays pretty important, right? So he appears in the Golden Age 34 times.
Oh.
Right? So before the 60s, he's 34 stories.
Okay.
He's got nothing on Joker though.
It's true. Yeah. Joker appeared 62 times.
Nice.
In the Golden Age. But
They knew.
They did, yes. Clayface was only twice for reference.
Uh-huh.
Catwoman 16 times. So,
Sex appeal. Got to get that.
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah, what do you guys think of that story?
Oh, it's just timeless. No notes. I mean, what else is there to say? It's it's phenomenal.
You're so kind.
Yeah, no, it's borderline unreadable. From how banal and uninteresting it is to its confusing depiction of itself. Even by the standards of the comic of the time, it's not engaging.
Yes.
Takes for granted the fact that its audience are like, no one over the age of 4 is reading this thing.
It's true. The variance in quality really gets me because if you go back and you read the first Robin story as an example, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like they have a beginning, middle, and end. There's coherent character motivation. There's and this is just like, why do I care?
Yeah.
What's happening? What is?
Yeah, it could be that like they're looking at this as like, this is our job now. Like this is a thing we can do. Look, famously, like, what was it? Arthur Conan Doyle, like, it's just like, I can't be writing all these freaking Sherlock Holmes stories. They're so like, we gotta wrap it up here. And it's like, dude, it's Batman. You're never gonna stop writing this. Like, so they're
right. Well,
yeah.
They're cranking it out too.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's a Detective Comics every month. There's a Batman story, at least one in those. Sometimes there's 2, right? There's Batman quarterly at this point.
Okay.
And there's like 4 or 5 Batman stories per Batman issue. There's World's Finest, which is also, I think, quarterly at this point.
Sure.
And that has I think 1 Batman story. It's not important, but like it's not like it is today where there's a different writer and artist crew for like each title.
Yeah.
These are the same guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like Bill Finger's writing
just trying to keep it fresh.
Yeah. Jeez. Pump it out.
So, it's that moment from the David Pumpkin sketch when they're on 100 floors of frights. They're not all going to be winners. There's 100 floors of these things, all right? Come on. Give me a break.
So one of the things we like to do is we like to try to figure out where the inspiration for the characters come from.
Yeah, okay.
What did people say?
Yeah.
So we try to get quotes from all the people who were in the room at the time, and literally in the room. This would have been in Bob Kane's apartment.
Right.
This is before they moved to the bullpen pen, so they're literally in his room.
Yeah.
And so I was able to find quotes from Jerry Robinson, Bob Kane, and Bill Finger.
Oh, wow.
Which has been unusual. It's been hard to find that. Yeah, so the Bob Kane quote comes from Tom Andre, who was the ghostwriter for Bob Kane's autobiography that came out.
Yes.
Yeah, Batman and Me.
Mm-hmm.
He did a book called Creator of the Superheroes that came out in 2008, which like has unedited, unabridged transcripts of those interviews.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a gold mine.
I bet.
And he asked, how did you come up with the Penguin?
So yeah, where did you what depths did you plumb to get this rich character?
And I wish it was depths.
Yeah, I know.
He said, I saw this cute little penguin on a cool cigarette pack. To me, penguins looked like a little fat man in tuxedo. I came up with the visual design of the character. Bill invented the man of 1,000 umbrellas idea and all the umbrella gimmicks the penguin used. He was more of a cartoony character, partly comedic because of his stature, but still evil and a killer. So I have here a picture of
the cool
cigarette penguin.
Nice.
Yeah.
This may in fact be proto penguin.
It's possible.
Oh,
this is
and it's
from the 30s.
For sure an advertisement for like children to smoke cigarettes.
Oh, absolutely. and it's a great life lesson to be like, listen, inspiration can come from anywhere, especially up to and including cigarettes, kids. So smoke up.
That's right.
Look at this cute little guy. That is almost, if you were to draw from his description that idea, it's this ad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is from the 30s, so that it could have very well have been.
Yeah.
It's cool, Kool. And in the book, they say that he was inspired by radio ads that they used to do where they would go, cool, cool. And I found on YouTube TV ads from like the 50s and 60s where they said that. But I couldn't actually find a radio ad from the 30s where they did that.
They weren't really trying to preserve everything back then. They were like, it's a cigarette ad.
Lots of
it's
things
difficult.
didn't make it. Yeah.
That's true.
What about Bill Finger?
Quote from Bill Finger, History of Comics. The penguin came out of an article in the Saturday Evening Post on emperor penguins. They looked like Englishmen in a fancy club. I decided the character had to have two things, a tuxedo-like costume with a top hat and an umbrella. I made umbrellas with gimmicks, all the weapons which would give him character. I decided to make the villain funny, but in a diabolical manner. I used the theme of birds. I bought books on birds and collected hundreds of articles for reference.
Yeah, so
I don't know if you needed hundreds of articles. I mean, maybe like 2.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that he doesn't actually look all that much like a penguin.
No, but you get it. It's funny. Like, you look at him and you're like, oh, that's a penguin. Like, if you were to ask a child to identify the penguin character with no context, they would probably nail it. Like, they'd probably be like, yeah, penguin, I got it.
Yeah, they've got the lineup. Like, well, that dude in green with question marks, he doesn't look like a penguin.
Right?
That
I know
guy
what
looks
that
like
is.
a penguin.
Exactly. Yeah. Name all the characters using names over here and character like designs over here. They match them up 100%.
Draw the lines.
No
exactly,
problem.
Yeah. Well, and then they help out because on the cover they've got a massive penguin like immediately behind him.
It's true.
Just in case they can't get it.
So then we've got one last quote, Jerry Robinson. This is a less good quote, but it is direct and it does mention the penguin.
Cool.
He says, I think there's very striking and memorable characters. The penguin was great because he had a lot of humor. He looked kind of comical, Chaplin-esque in a way. The penguin was fun to draw. I think he added a new kind of villain to the mix, coming after the Joker. Two-Face, of course, is the opposite. There's a horror and drama in the concept. All of those characters, one coming after another in quick succession, and they come very quickly here, really made Batman. After the first series with the Joker, the other characters, the sum total, had a great deal to do with Batman's success.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, you're selling on, you're selling Batman. Batman sells. Batman, the character, everyone's like on board for that character. But the reason you keep coming back, and it's a thing that like Hollywood will immediately fall in love with, like from the 66, Adam West show to the Burton period, is the villains. Like the villains are what you come for Batman, you stay for the fun villains.
It's true. So one thing that I should mention, because if I don't, I'm going to get comments from the Turbo Nerds.
Naturally.
Is that there is some controversy about plagiarism. And this happens with a lot of the
we are dealing with
Batman
Bob Kane,
characters.
so I mean, yeah.
It's true, but here's the thing that we've come to find out, and I'm trying to make this a thing that we are able to clear up, because I think there's not a single repository where this happens on the internet.
Yeah.
It is true that like Partners in Peril, the first story, the very, very first Batman story, is a total lift, both art and story, right? It's a slam dunk. The whole thing is plagiarized.
Yeah, it's a lock.
But there are things after that people sort of say, and because of that, there's other things that are 100% plagiarism.
Sure.
And they're not. So we had a whole episode that was basically on the fandom claim that the Joker is a ripoff of a character from The Shadow,
right?
Called the Grim Joker.
Yes, I've heard that accusation before.
Yeah, in my estimation, not true. We tried to lay out the evidence for people, let them decide on their own, but like, I'm pretty sure that's not a thing.
Fair.
There's a similar claim for the Penguin.
Okay.
Dick Tracy. We've not talked about Dick Tracy a lot on the show.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, there's a very good chance
Yeah. So there's a character in Dick Tracy called Broadway Bates. Okay. And it definitely comes first. The first appearance of Broadway Bates happens in February of 1932. Yeah. And he has a cigarette holder, a bowler hat, and a monocle. Mm-hmm. And I've dropped some pictures of him in the doc so that you guys can see. Yep. He's a check forger. He's a gangster. And in the story where he appears, which I read before for prep, he's hatching a confidence scam. There's this woman who recently inherited $10,000, and they've got a couple different people, basically actors. Like there's a woman who's like trying to gain her trust. There's a man who's like a shopkeep where she frequents, that are trying to convince her that they need to invest their money with their group. Right. So they're going to take the $10,000, invest it. They're going to take it. Yeah, right. Yeah. So he's kind of a criminal mastermind. He is kind of pulling strings. And if you look at these pictures, I don't know, Brian, do you want to describe the way it looks?
Oh, it looks like the Penguin.
It's the Penguin in a smoking jacket.
No, I mean it's a dude. He's got a bowler hat. He's got the monocle, which is a really common Penguin element. He's blowing smoke out of his nose. I mean, I assume that's smoke. He's got one of those big, long, like Cruella de Vil, stem cigarettes or whatever.
It's a cigarette holder.
Yeah. Cigarette holder. Yeah. And I don't know. It just looks like the Penguin. And he's got a cane down there in the bottom right panel as well, which is reminiscent of the umbrella, but it's a cane.
Yeah.
To me, like, this could be, and like I definitely see if you just say like, okay, this came first. He looks like the Penguin. It's a thing. You can draw a straight line. Like there's a bunch of stuff that Dick Tracy inspired.
Well, especially because like penguins don't have monocles, like extended cigarettes, hats, like fancy outfits. Like the closest thing you got is the fancy outfit. And by the way, Bates ain't wearing it. Like that's a suit, not a tuxedo. So that's a big distinction. But from the neck up,
it's true. And they don't say that Broadway Bates is the Penguin, right? There's no Penguin, alignment there. And if you allow me a small rebuttal, I dug in on this, right? So I was like, cigarette holder. Is that a thing in the 30s? And I looked it up. Totally is.
Right.
This is something that upper
aristocrats
people were doing.
Would use, yeah.
Yes. And like, if you're an oil baron, if you're well-to-do, if you're in New York City, in fact, perhaps if you're the governor of New York City.
Oh, no.
One Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah, okay.
You might use a cigarette holder. And what you guys aren't seeing if you're listening to the audio version is that I've just scrolled up the document and you can see a famous photo of FDR that was taken December of 1932, which is before this comic book.
Looking like the Penguin.
By about 9 years. Looking exactly like the Penguin.
Yeah.
He's got the cigarette holder pointed up. He's not wearing a monocle, but he is wearing sort of frameless glasses that are perched on his nose. He's got the grin,
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. We can't conclusively say. We can't go back in time. We can't exhume the corpse of Bob Kane and ask.
No. Yeah. And he would lie anyway. But the
it's true.
He'd be like, I came up with it myself, all by myself. What are you talking about? But I back then, I having a passing familiarity with like that kind of like era of creation, they were kind of borrowing from each other, like
totally.
So I mean, I can imagine them seeing, at the very least, the Dick Tracy character, because there is heavy crossover from like the sources, right? Like they're seeing Dick Tracy every effing day in the paper. There's no way you can plausibly deny that they've never seen that character. Maybe
it's incredibly popular,
right? Exactly, but also just the crossover of like aristocrats use the following accoutrements, or at the very least, those in the like public criticism sphere, people who like do caricature work, cartooning work. Draw an aristocrat. They're going to put the cigarette in the long thing. They're going to give him some kind of eyewear. The monocle is the most immediately identifiable. I cite Mr. Peanut, who literally is also wearing everything that the Penguin wears. Is Mr. Peanut a, some kind of derivation or inspiration for Penguin? I say no. I think it's just that's just what they wear, and that's what we cartoonishly describe as a rich person.
Right.
So, like, These are just these are the tools available to the people at the time, and
Yeah.
so while it could be reasoned that like the Dick Tracy analog makes sense, it could also be just as likely that two minds think alike, and they had the same. They're just like the same people were just like, draw a cartoonishly simplistic depiction of a rich person and also make them penguin themed. You know, everyone thinks of like tuxedos for penguins, and so it's like you put them in one of those outfits and you're halfway there anyway. So like,
I could not have said it better myself. I'm so glad that you're on the same page with us, because I think that's the stake we've been trying to put in the ground is like, hey, totally inspiration, maybe. But like, there are people who are like, if you're a Shadow fan, like if that's your diehard, you bleed Dick Tracy, then it's like, this is plagiarism and it's an affront. And like, I will fly that flag, and, you know, just trying to bring some context and some history and talk about it. So.
Yeah. I mean, I also like things of the time. I'm really curious if people who plagiarized at the time were like, think about how hard it is to look things up. But there's no Google. They'll never run across these things. They'll never make this connection. Yeah.
They didn't think their stuff was going to get reprinted. Yeah. Like they thought it was going to get printed once. Kids were going to read it. It was going to end up in the trash, never to be seen again. Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's also disposable. Yeah. You know, they're like no one's going to see Penguin long enough to sue me. It's true.
Right. They don't know that it's going to be in 34 issues yet. Right.
Yep.
So any closing thoughts on the Penguin before we move on to wrap up the show?
Tell the listeners what's ComicPOP.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. ComicPOP is essentially just a couple of chuckleheads sitting on a couch talking about comic books. Unless you go to our sister channel, ComicPOP Returns, which is more like this. It's a podcast series where me and another guest chat about any number of topics, from the weekly releases of books to one particular topic, whether it's costume rankings to the news of the day to movies. And comic book related media. So if you like that kind of thing, and especially if you like it from this kind of perspective of like an armchair, like, not terribly self-serious kind of perspective, then I think we might be for you. Check them out.
Yeah, I love ComicPOP. It should be, if you've ever watched it and then you've watched our show, it might be obvious that like I'm doing a poor Salem imitation every time we do a recap of a comic book. Like, there's a little bit of inspiration there for sure. I appreciate it. And one of the things that I love about you guys, and you in particular, Sal, is that you're never afraid of giving your opinion.
Right. So yeah, that gets me in trouble.
Well, it does it? Because, like, for example, you're very on the record about your feelings about Tom King's Batman, as an example. But then you've gone on to like do numerous. Today, didn't you drop an episode?
We did. I just shot it last night.
Yeah, you do interviews with him all the time.
Well, and it really, I'm lucky that Tom has a couple of Eisners under his belt to be like, yeah, sure, who gives a shit what Sal thinks? Oh no, he didn't like my Batman run. I'm crying all the way to the bank. But he also is like secure enough to be like, all right, yeah, you know what? Like my run's not gonna be for everybody. If I hated everything he made, he probably wouldn't come on the show, but the fact is, I was very critical of his run. The reality is I've been very critical of most like contemporary Batman runs. It has taken a long time, but I have like looked back and been like, perhaps I judged you too harshly, daughter. I maybe really should have been more appreciative of what we had when we had it, because like the Snyder Capullo run, I was very critical of that as well. And it got me into Scott Snyder's view. That is not the way to do it, by the way, is to openly judge your betters. Because it's closed some doors for me, certainly, in a lot of ways. But for some of these folks, they're just like, well, you made a measured, thoughtful and clearly vehement criticism of what I do, and that speaks to something that I might also agree with in some way, and and also it's couched in a like, but I also like this. It's with Tom King and Scott Snyder for that matter. There's tons of stuff that they've done, and in fact, more things they've done that I've liked, and that helps a lot. But yeah, I do not shy away from my opinion, and that's actually gotten me a lot of criticism. Not to make this the Sal show, I apologize.
No, this is what the segment is for.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Well, it's a segment. All right, I thought we were just closing the show, but people don't like, because they don't really like understand that I'm like professional and courteous with creators on the shows that we've done when we've had them on, with people I've criticized, because I've never criticized their character, and if I did, they're not coming on the show,
Yeah.
But those that I've criticized, I'll criticize to their faces, but I won't use it as an opportunity to go someplace personal, visceral, or insulting.
Sure.
It may be vehement for the purposes of entertainment. Like, if we're doing a show and I say, this is the worst Batman I've ever read, there is a degree of hyperbole there. I may feel like that in the moment, and I'm not saying that I'm going to walk it entirely back, but if I say in one breath with a full throat, this sucks, and then the dude who wrote it is sitting right next to me and he goes, really? I'm not going to be like, well, I mean, but I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to look at his face and be like, yeah, you're garbage, man. Like, that's totally. So insulting, and it's inappropriate. It's something I would never do to a person regardless of what they're doing, like
Sure,
whether it's writing comics or parallel parking. But some people don't like that. They're like, you had like people on your show and you've made 90-minute programs about how you don't like what they've done, and then you didn't mention it at all in the interview. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what an interview is. It's not a roast.
I bring it up to sing your praise. Like, to be clear, like, I think you've
walked... I know this isn't a gotcha. Like,
I think you have walked that tightrope of like knowing that like your audience appreciates honesty and transparency and like emotion and like putting on a show, but also like being professional and knowing when and where and like knowing how to build that rapport, and like it's awesome. I love ComicPOP for all of that.
Oh, thank you. And we've because of our exposure to like to the human element of it, I think it has changed a lot of our original very knee-jerk kind of like casually cruel approach that we had originally. Sure. Because I grew up reading Wizard magazine, like many of us, and many of us over the age of 30. But I've read a lot of Wizard magazine, and Wizard was very critical of very popular creators, and they would also be the like #1 comics magazine and have those creators like interviewed or promoting, and I was just like, that's just part of the game, but it turns out that like some people took that stuff very personally and very seriously, and they were a lot more cavalier in their depiction. They would just say like, you farted and suck, and I'm like, no, come on, like, it's like we don't need to accuse them of flatulence. There's no need for that. But and it all started with me spending like I think an hour talking about how like I didn't like Zero Year because and it again, it's all about context, right? Because it's not just like I didn't know, and I wasn't. It was, I would say that DC did a very poor job, deliberately so, to explain / promote like what 0 Year was. And what the New 52 represented, so like I'm here being told that like Year One, a seminal period in Batman's history, is no longer canon and is in fact relegated to irrelevance, and instead here is this, and it's this overly complicated, very sprawling epic that is shades of what it was, but is in no way comparable, and I'm like, this sucks. And but it's not like it sucks. It's like it sucks in the context of what I'm being presented by the company and by the creators, seemingly with their with their lack of context. And so then having Scott Snyder appear in the comments and be like, sorry, I didn't like it. I was like, oh my God, suddenly became real. Suddenly became a human being who's like, I wrote this book, God knows what's happened. My wife's pregnant, or I'm underwater. I'm trying to get my life together. I'm just trying to tell a Batman story, and then there's these chimps on a couch making fun of me for 90 minutes about how much it sucks and how it's really ruining comic books everywhere.
Totally. And it's like, not for nothing, but like DiDio's asking him to do things, right?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, no, it's DiDio deliberately told him.
Right.
Because apparently, and I've asked Scott this before, like Scott has said this on the record, like he's like, I wanted it to be more like Year One in as much as I think, and apologies if I'm misquoting or misremembering, but as I recall, like he wanted to initially like couch it with Year One, like Year One happened and also this.
Yeah.
And DiDio's like, no, it is a reboot. Like it is a reboot. You have to think of it as Year One never happened.
Right.
And like that's very freeing, and it's also like if I'm on DC's payroll, if I am literally trying to get my foot in the door, I've never invented witches, I don't have like a movie deal or anything, I'm just writing Batman. After having written like, a detective comic story I don't think people are going to read that suddenly becomes everyone's favorite detective comic story.
Sure.
The Black Mirror. But now I've got Batman. I'm a young guy, new family, I'm starting out, and they're like, hey, you got to reset Batman's origins. There's no effing way I'm going to hit year one.
Right.
But also, anything I do is going to be compared to it, and I'm going to be criticized for it.
Right.
And so
it's an impossible situation.
It's an impossible situation, and I think he nails it. Like I think, and the funny thing is, like without the context or with the context, like Zero Year gets better. Especially because like it's all Capullo the whole time.
Right.
It manages to cleverly and conveniently couch, like it raises up the Riddler. It also handles the Joker origin, and it sets up this new villain concept, and it establishes Batman's lore while also calling back to things from the 40s, and like Bruce's uncle and all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Turns out Zero Year doesn't suck. Turns out that like it's actually pretty okay.
Yeah.
And maybe it's even better. I haven't reread it.
Sure.
But just from what I remember, I'm like, okay, you know what? Like there are moments that I love from Zero Year. And that's not to use this as an opportunity just to walk back my one time I talked about Zero Year like 7 or 8 years ago. But it's thanks to like the humanization of the creator and his patience with me that I'm able to find joy and appreciation for art where I originally saw an affront.
Right.
And that's magic. And it's
people are going on that journey with you, man. Like
that's the thing. That's very lucky. I'm very lucky that like, hopefully I've changed a few minds and spun a few hearts in the right direction, but at the very least I have found joy in something that I initially found to be insulting and appreciate a creator in a new way. And so that's just one general thing that I've been rewarded for by having creators give me the time of day. And that's the thing, they're bigger than me. And I don't mean like bigger in terms of size or scope or money. I mean like they're bigger men than me. They're better than me because like I'm like, hey, this sucks. This is garbage, right, friends? Fart, ha ha. And he's like, hey man, listen, like I hear what you're saying. And instead of just being like, hey, F you.
Yeah.
Or like, he just goes like, hey, listen, the next morning he goes, hey, Dan, really quick. There's this guy, his name's Sal. Here's his YouTube channel. Could you add him to the list of people who will never work here as a personal favor for me?
Yeah. But instead they're coming on the show, right?
Instead, he comes on the damn show and he's like, hey, let's talk about comic books. And I'm like, awesome. Suddenly I'm the asshole. And it's like, you know what? I'm perfectly willing to admit when that happens, and it happens more than once. It's like, I remember I've criticized, and I'm still right about this, but like, criticized the idea of like getting into mainstream comics and talking about like, here's a new character. And I'm like, and during a time when like the CW is just churning out shows and just that's the way in which people make like additional money. Nobody gets into comic books to become rich, but there are avenues to make extra bucks from just a simple matter of writing a story arc. It's just like, oh, you could do that. You could call back to a character that was created in 1975.
You gotta get those royalty dollars, right?
Yeah, or you could make a new guy, and that's yours forever. And those people across the hall are developing shows and need new characters. And suddenly you've got a character that's relevant, hip, and today that you can use in that vehicle. And because contract rights are such that like I can be paid royalties, suddenly it pays to do the thing I'm here to do for fun and love, and maybe not money, and still make my money. And I understand it, but I am going to call it out. And some folk don't like that very much either.
Sure.
But
it's frustrating to be a reader to feel like, hey, I've read books from this person before and they were in a different mode. And then all of a sudden a switch flipped and it was a different thing. Right.
Absolutely.
So I get it.
Oh yeah. Well, or like, there's a character that does this already.
Right.
That occupies this role.
Yes.
I'm not here to call people out, but I will say that like Jim Rhodes had a niece who's a genius.
Right.
Or you could make a new character.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. By the way, like, and one of those things in that particular case, it's like, haven't you done
this
enough?
before?
Like, haven't you made enough money? Like, you don't need to make 5 hits.
Yeah.
You know, you could be happy with the 1 smash hit you have, or the 2 or 3 or 6 you already created.
Right.
But whatever. You know, but that's neither here nor there. But I appreciate the kindness. Thank you. And I'm doing what I love, and I'm really happy to be here. Just churning out stuff and yucking it up with my friends, and somehow people find that entertaining. And I want to say that like that's a very big surprise to me, but honestly, like I remember like in high school yucking it up with the same people and being like, this should be a show.
Yeah, that's awesome. that's so good.
That's awesome. So one tradition whenever we have a guest is we have to ask, what is your earliest memory of Batman?
Oh man, well the earliest memory of Batman could be it's one or the other. It's either watching Adam West, because I definitely watched the Adam West show in syndication on TV when I was a kid. Typically it was on repeat on like some channel, God knows what. It was on basic television. Yeah. No, I didn't have cable back then.
Okay.
Like,
fair enough.
Well, no, yeah, it was on FX. When I was a kid, we didn't have cable. We didn't have cable way before or way after a lot of people did get cable. We lived in the woods, and the cable company is like, I'm not putting cable up there. You know?
Right.
So like when it was a big windstorm, we'd have a TV antenna like fall down, and like it was just a question of like, when's Dad gonna go up on the roof and put it back? And because we don't have a TV. Yeah. But I remember watching a lot of Adam West TV, and just and just loving it, especially loving Robin. I loved the suit, and I loved his attitude and everything, and that was always fun. Or it was reading Batman comics. Like that 40s to the 70s book that I had was like, those were my first Batman comic books.
Wow.
Though I should say that like my mom had a friend when I was growing up at a very young age who her husband like left early on and left his stuff, and one of the things that he left was like a number of Golden Age Batman comic books that she kept in the China hutch. So when I would sleep over, I would read like Batman, you know, like I know she had like the first appearance of Robin, like just as a big old Golden Age comic book, and I'd read them and eat cereal while reading $25,000 to $50,000 comic books because no one knew, because I'm a child, it's made for me, albeit, you know, 7 or 8 decades before, but you know, and I don't know, and she doesn't know either. It only until she had 2 beautiful daughters, so obviously that was gonna be a problem, and much older than I am. It's not like that was a thing, but like one of them inevitably got a boyfriend who read comic books. And those books disappeared. And Lord knows, maybe he helped them sell it. You know, but more likely he was like, "Oh, what are you going to do with these?" And you know, she was like, "I don't know, nothing, I guess." And he's like, "Oh, I'll just take them off your hands."
Yeah. But, how old would you have been at that time?
Back when I was reading Golden Age Batman comic books at the breakfast table, eating like Honey Graham O's or whatever, I was probably 6.
Wow.
6 or 7.
Yeah. So you're steeped in it.
Oh yeah, no, I've full exposure to Batman. I mean, like I remember, here's me dating myself. I dressed as Batman for the Batman '89 movie premiere.
There you go.
Like
that's awesome.
And then I was told that night, right before leaving, that someone read in the Star Ledger that it was too violent for children. I couldn't go. So I had to.
How heartbreaking was that?
It was devastating. I'm gonna go see Batman on this in the movie at nighttime. Yeah. And then I'm wearing my Batman costume, and then I'm told I literally come downstairs, I'm ready to go, and my mom's like, "Oh, by the way, you're not going, and it's time for bed."
Heartbreaking.
So
that's like
get out of here. Yeah, no,
and it was
devastating.
For bed. Oh.
Yeah, so get out of here. Yeah, not only are you not going to see Batman, but you have to go to bed now.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, these are early vivid memories of Batman. But Batman is like, you know, it's Spider-Man and Batman for me. Those are my like I know it's very plebeian to be like, you know, my favorite superheroes. Oh, maybe the most popular ones. But you know, there are reasons for that, and it's not just because they're popular, but also because like I had direct exposure to those characters at a very young age, and not you know, and comics. Batman in particular was comics. You know. It was one to one. You know, it was Adam West on TV and the comic books that were available to me at the time. But Spider-Man took longer. You know, that was like, I will say really quickly, there's a, I want to say there was there were these flyers, like these like planes that you'd buy that they sold on TV. Like there was commercials for them. Yeah, you'd hit these flyers and you throw them.
Did you like mail in for it?
No, it was just a TV commercial. God knows where you got them. I assume at like, you know, Bradley's or, you know, Caldor. But like back then it was like Captain America or Duke or Spider-Man on printed on the side of the flyers, and you'd throw them and they'd fly. There's planes basically. And I remember a kid yelling about Spider-Man in the commercial, and I saw that suit and I'm like, that guy's awesome. And then thankfully Muppet Babies had an entire episode dedicated to Spider-Man.
There you go.
That was the end of it.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
Yeah, you're making us look like amateurs.
No.
Well, the premise of the show is that we don't know anything and we're learning it. We're teaching it, but we're also figuring it all out for the first time. So
that's great. It means you have an open mind and you don't have a preconceived idea of what you're getting into. Maybe you do, but it's only tertiary. It's tertiary. It's not that's great.
Yeah. Well, Sal, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
It's such a pleasure to have you, especially after we've watched your shows and find you so funny.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
It's so great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. Anytime.
Hey, Bat Family. Help us out and drop a like on the video and tell us what we got wrong in the comments. If you want your voicemail or letter on the show, you can send it to us on our website, batlessons.com. And to keep the Batman history train going, watch this video next.